Hi class, this week we are talking about stress with chapter 14. So we skipped around a little bit with chapters. One of the things that we're going to focus on is looking at a more holistic view of how stress impacts us. And by doing that, we're going to look at biological considerations, psychological considerations, and social considerations, which is part of that biopsychosocial model. There are a couple of videos within the modules that go over this. One's a student example, and one just gives some general information about the biopsychosocial model. So please do view those. When we talk about stress, you'll see there's a lot of individual differences in how we interpret what is stressful, what isn't stressful, and part of that is a cognitive appraisal. So your book discusses this as well, but going through no matter what event it is, you're going to see there's individual differences in how stressful you interpret that situation or that event. And again, we call that a cognitive appraisal. And we also have once we've appraised something as stressful, again, there's going to be connected back to the biopsychosocial model. There could be an emotional response to this. There could be a physiological response to this. This which is going to connect back with chapter 3 when we talked about the autonomic system with the parasympathetic and the sympathetic, and then a behavioral scenario and response. So again, there's different ways that we're going to respond to stress. There's also different ways that we measure stress. And so you've got an activity this week where you're going to go through and take a couple of different stress measures. You have an option from several that are posted. One of the activities for this week. One of the most common is to do self-report measures. We talked about this with research methods, but it would be a survey where you kind of either rate your events, has this happened, hasn't this happened, or rate your responses to those. So one example is a social readjustment rating scale, which has also been adapted for college students. So I have a link there if you want to take that, but you are going to be taking that as one of your options for the activities this week. We do see that stressors can be major events like a death in the family or a wedding or a birth. We can also see it's just daily hassles. And daily hassles, you might think, oh, well, that's just daily hassles, but they can be cumulative in nature. And then that can really impact us. And again, those experiences of feeling stressed is a large part are cognitive processes. When I come across something as a situation, am I interpreting that as stressful? How am I dealing with that? So your book discusses our primary and secondary appraisals. When we talk about stress, there's also things to think about with conflict. And so there's different types of conflict that can be stressful in situations. So this gives a general example. You might not think this is a big deal, but some people will go through and have stressful situations when they've got two great choices. So that's the approach. So gosh, I'm really good at tennis and racquetball. Actually, I'm not good at either one, but if I was, oh my gosh, the conflict I might have. I love Italian food. I can't decide. Do I want pizza? Do I want spaghetti? We also have situations where we have two negative things, two things I don't really want to pick either one, but I've got to pick. And that's the avoidance approach. And so, gosh, I'm having a hard time finding a job. Do I want to face unemployment, or do I want to take this job that's not going to pay as well, or I might interpret as degrading? I'm going through a lot of back problems. Do I want to continue on having that back pain, or do I want to have surgery? I don't like the idea of having surgery either. Again, that would be avoidance. And then you've got cases where you've got scenarios and there's positive and pros and cons, positives and negatives within that event. And so those we call approach avoidance. And we also see you can have a kind of being multidimensional where you could have numerous situations where you've got several different things where you're trying to go through and decide. When we go through and talk about stress, again, stress has that physiological connection, which relates to the sympathetic and parasympathetic response. So your book goes over that, but I'll show you again the slide that we've seen before when we talked about the parasympathetic and the sympathetic system. The sympathetic is stress. That's when you're in stress mode for the autonomic system. It's autonomic. This thing, your body automatically will go through and do these adjustments. Again, connecting back to our midbrain. connecting back to fight or flight. Once we've removed that stressor, our body can then go into that parasympathetic system. So remember the parachute, kind of the calming system. When we go through and have stressors, there is a general adaptation syndrome or general adaptation model, and that is how does our body react to the stressor? So I like to use the analogy of a firefighter. So we first see the stressor, and that could be the case where we've got our body's going to signal we've got stress. So we've got adrenal glands releasing hormones, and that's going to get us into the sympathetic response. And we've got that initial shock phase. We then are going to be going through that stressor, trying to resist that. Again, that could be our body kind of keeping up, keeping going, like a firefighter would put out a fire. And then we're going to go through and have the exhaustion phase where we've just gone through and kind of depleted a lot of our resources with those situations. So that exhaustion phase, we've really depleted a lot of our resources. So from fighting things off and having stressful situations, this could incur that a person has high blood pressure. This could be a person has a weakened immune system. We've just kind of used up all of our body's abilities to kind of fight this off. And then the parasympathetic system is going to try to reactivate and try to replenish those resources. This is a good explanation. This model is a good explanation when at the end of the semester you might have gone on vacation or started to relax and then you get sick. Well, that's part of that recovery. You've gone through, exhausted your efforts trying to keep up with your job and work, etc. And your body just had it. And so you got sick with your weakened immune system. We also see that there's different health-related reasons or connections with stress. So I could feel stress. We're going to talk about coping. I could make some bad coping decisions. Oh, I'm feeling stressed. Maybe I want to eat a bag of chips or eat junk food to make myself temporarily feel better. Well, that isn't going to do my body any good. I also am going to get releasing those stress hormones. And these things can all contribute to having more health complications. So your book in chapter 14, I think it's figure 4.15, has this bar graph that goes through and shows stressors and people facing chronic stressors and how sick they got over a 1 month, 3 month, and 6 month period. We also see that just being in a stressful state. Again, we talked about the physiological response. We also have the emotional and behavioral response. Sometimes even being around someone who's stressed can lead you to be more stressed, almost like emotion condensation. So this relates to this transactional model hostility. So this also connects to Bandura's theory as well. When we talked about reciprocal determinism, I could go into this event, I'm coming into this environment, I could see this individual, maybe my boss is really stressed, really short with me, and I'm not sure why, but he's got or she's got more defensiveness, etc. Well, then that's going to interpret my reactions, how I'm seeing things, and then I could turn around and be more confrontational. This can be why, in some cases, fights get really ugly. Because both are kind of feeding off this negative hostility, defensiveness, etc. that's going on. It also, being in that situation, can be stressful, which can connect to the midbrain, and this can relate back to that idea of flipping your lid and losing control of kind of being rational. So that's something also to consider in these situations with behavioral and emotional responses. So what are some things that we can do? So when we're feeling stressed, again, it is a biopsychosocial model. And so things that are going to connect to feeding us well with our bodies is also going to help us with this idea of stress, and preventative health care can also be a great sense. And we also know, which we talked about before, with neurotransmitters, oxytocin, our connector, our relationship connector, can help buffer some of those effects we see with cortisol and other stress. And this also connects to one of the videos you're going to see with Dr. Kelly McGolligan. So some things we can do. Positive, there's good ways of coping, which we call constructive ways of coping, and then there's not constructive ways of coping. So constructive ways of coping, what that means is I'm trying to address my stress in a positive way that's going to help alleviate it and kind of either solve my problem or help me emotionally kind of reset so then I can problem solve. Right, so I have this stressor. Oh no, I failed my psychology exam. Hopefully that's not any of us. But one thing is, okay, I problem solve. What am I doing wrong? Am I not studying correctly? It's harder to study in an online environment. How can I improve my grade? How can I improve my learning and retention of the information? That would be problem focused. You also have emotion focused. I am just feeling so crummy that I didn't do well on my psych exam. I need to do this emotionally. I need some emotional support. I need emotional connection. And then I can kind of tackle that problem. So those would be two ways of constructive coping. You also have non-constructive coping. So non-constructive self-indulgence, this could be I'm going to turn around and eat junk food. This could be I'm going to turn around and go shopping. I'm going to indulge myself in some way to temporarily make myself feel better. We also have the case of rumination. Rumination is just you go over the event over and over and over and replay it. And that just feeds those negative feelings and those problems and causes actually more anxiety as well. Kind of keeping on repeating that. And then learned helplessness is this idea that I have this mindset that I can't do anything, I'm going to fail. Kind of why try? So all of those are not constructive coping, and if I catch myself doing those, I need to figure out, well, what's my plan that I can help realign myself and do some constructive coping. Some ways that we know we can handle stress. Again, some of these are going to connect to the biopsychosocial model. So progressive relaxation, this is getting your muscles tight and then getting them loose. And so that idea of tightening and loosening helps kind of reset your body and get you into your sympathetic response. Guided imagery can also sometimes be helpful when you know you're feeling stressed. Again, you're starting to see some of those physiological reactions of stress, that fight or flight mode. If you have, this sometimes can be practiced, but if you have a scene or a setting that you can go to and visualize, that might help calm yourself down. There's other things, sometimes it just has to do with life skills. I need to be better at saying no. I need to be better at making decisions. I need to be better at just doing different things. And then another statement is if I'm catching myself ruminating, I can do stress inoculation, which is I'm going to give myself positive statements. I'm not going to feed those negative statements, which can give me more anxiety and can lead me to feel more learned helplessness. So I'm going to tell myself positive affirmations. This is something I can handle. This is something I can do. I can help problem solve in these situations, etc. So that is health and stress in a nutshell. These are themes that we're going to be visiting throughout the semester. This is a really big chapter that connects to life skills, just helping us lead better lives is better understanding stress, better understanding ways of coping, better understanding relaxation. So I also have added key term slides. So these are some of the key terms from chapter 14. So have a great week, and I hope you're not feeling too stressed.